Hello everyone, my name is Josh and welcome to the second bonus video for the Sonic 2 playthrough. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing the development history of the Genesis version of Sonic 2, as well as taking a look at the first of two prototypes that we're really going to go in depth into. So let's get straight into it. The first thing I want to say is that I may butcher some of these Japanese names, so I apologize in advance. Development of Sonic 2 was a bit rocky at the beginning. Yuji Naka left Sega due to disagreements, but he was approached by the head of the Sega Technical Institute, Mark Cerny, who promised him a higher salary and more freedom. Naka agreed and joined the STI. Sonic 1's lead level designer, Hirokazu Yasuhara, had also joined the STI. Although the STI at the time were working on the game Kid Chameleon, with the arrival of Naka, Yasuhara, and many other Japanese staff members, the team were sure to get their biggest assignment yet, the sequel to Sonic the Hedgehog. With two of the three main people behind the original success, the third, Naoto Oshima, stayed in Japan and eventually directed Sonic CD, it only made sense to devote the team to Sega's biggest franchise. Development on the sequel, however, would not begin until November 1991. One of the first things done for the new title was a new main character. Much like Sonic 1, a contest was held between the designers. This was because Naka requested a two-player mode, something he wanted to implement in Sonic 1, but couldn't due to time restraints. The winner of the contest was Yasuagi Yamaguchi, and I probably really butchered that, who won with his two-tailed fox design. Yamaguchi wanted him to be called Miles Prower, however the rest of the team wanted Tails, to match the simplicity with Sonic's name. Yamaguchi was unhappy with this idea, however, and managed to sneak the name into various concept art and the game itself, making both names canon in the end. The original plan for Sonic 2 was to be an 18-zone epic, revisiting many level tropes from the first game and delving into traditional desert and snow worlds. The first stages that were worked on for the sequel were Emerald Hill Zone, Hilltop Zone, Oil Ocean Zone, Hidden Palace Zone, Dust Hill Zone, and the never formally titled Winter Zone. Time travel was also discussed in early meetings, however early on it was known they weren't going to meet the Christmas 1992 deadline, so some worlds and ideas were cut. Dust Hill and the Winter Stage were some of the first to be chopped. Because of the mixture of American and Japanese workers, communication was somewhat complicated, but everyone pulled through in the end. One of the biggest things the team wanted was for the game to be promoted. The hype for the project grew every day, with more pressure being put on the development team. Not content with just screenshots, Sega got in contact with Nickelodeon, and a special cartridge was put together for contestants to play on a game show called Nick Arcade, featuring an early Emerald Hill Zone. This prototype eventually became known as the Nick Arcade prototype. Soon after Nick Arcade was filmed, another build was put together and showcased at a New York toy show. This build was a playable demo. However, the security there was not very good, and the cartridge was stolen. This prototype later became known as the famous Sonic 2 beta, and later on, the Simon White prototype. More levels were removed as time went on, with the team barely being able to finish the 11 levels that ended up in the final release. The very last stage that was removed was one of the very first that was worked on, Hidden Palace Zone. However, despite the game being rushed to completion, Sonic 2 was released simultaneously in the United States and Europe on a day that has become affectionately referred to as Sonic Tuesday. Yeah. To massive success, becoming the best-selling Sonic game on the system. The entire team celebrated their success on November 23rd, 1992. Let's go back to the time travel idea. This concept was only an idea that was never actually confirmed, until May of 2017, when Hirokazu Yasuhara detailed some of the early stages of Sonic 2's development as part of a game presentation at Digital Dragons 2017. Of note was slides showing the time travel idea. Sonic 2's version of time travel was something very different to what the audience eventually got in Sonic CD. Instead of being reskinned versions of the same stages, each time period would have its own set of stages. His presentation showed 4 slides showing maps for each time period, which were as follows. Firstly, Presence Time, containing Green Hill Zone, which most likely became Emerald Hill Zone, Woods Zone, Sand Shower Zone, Metropolis Zone, and Ocean Wind Zone. Future, which contained Chemical Plant Zone, Casino Night Zone, and Genocide City Zone. We'll get back to that in a later video. The Ruined Present Time, containing Dust Hill Zone, Rock World Zone, and Oil Ocean Zone. And the Ancient Time, containing Hilltop Zone, Blue Lake Zone, Rock World Zone again, Tropical Plant Zone, and Olympus. The plot is believed to be very similar to Sonic CD. Eggman would travel to the past and damage the future. Sonic would follow and right the wrongs. However, these plans are extremely early, likely from before work even began on the game. Another interesting tidbit is that Sonic 2 was originally supposed to have holographic cartridge labels. However, they were scrapped because of the money it would have cost to produce. The Nick Arcade Proto, however, uses one of these labels. Like with Sonic 1 before it, some mock-up screenshots were created and sent out to the press. In all mock-ups, Sonic is off-center, the layout does not exist in the final, and the enemy and ring placement are a bit strange. Firstly, we have an Emerald Hill mock-up. This mock-up uses Green Hill's clouds from Sonic 1 and the Sonic 1 HUD design. Next up is a pretty infamous mock-up of Hidden Palace, showing a background that isn't used in any other material, and an unused enemy, known as Stego. And of course, the incredibly famous mock-up of Dust Hill Zone, showing off another unused enemy called Gator. This screenshot still ended up being the only shot of the zone in existence. What we are now looking at is the Nick Arcade prototype of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. First, I'm going to tell you some general information about this build. First off, this build is only dated as 1992 with no exact date. However, through information and figuring stuff out, people have generally figured out that this is presumed to be from before May 30th. Nick Arcade started filming its second season in June 1992, where this build most likely appeared. This build really shows that Sonic 2 was built off of Sonic 1, with many mechanics and other things hinting towards this. I'll get into this a bit later on. Tails here is quasi-independent, unlike the final game. He can be controlled by player 2, but will also follow Sonic around. Tails cannot complete a stage on his own, as the game will only load the goalpost when Sonic approaches. Tails can also lose rings for Sonic if he gets hurt. And his AI is much simpler. Tails will copy Sonic's moves and will make no attempt to keep up with him. Two-player mode at this point is extremely incomplete, due to tons of odd glitches and not being enabled for every zone. Invincibility doesn't show stars, but the music plays. They both last till the end of an act. Sonic will for some reason rebound off walls if he runs into them too fast, using new sprites that were unused by the next prototype. The spin dash at this point is a work in progress. Sonic and Tails can only charge it once, and it uses the sound for Sonic spinning in Sonic 1. The spike glitch is in this prototype, and the ground speed cap from Sonic 1 still exists. Locking on this prototype with Sonic and Knuckles will unlock Blue Sphere, and the timer resets to 9 minutes when it hits 9:59. The screen also doesn't scroll when you look up and down. The Nick Arcade prototype has its own set of cheat codes, then there's nowhere near as many as Sonic 2. To get to the level select, you have to hit up, down, 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 up, and then hold A+ start on the title screen. To get two-player mode, go to any stage, and then hold B and press start. To get debug mode in this proto, press CC, up, down, 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 up, hold A and press start. Now that we're loading back to the title screen, let's talk about that. First off, you may notice the title screen looks like the 8-bit version. This title screen was used in the next two prototypes, and this title screen also appears in the instruction manual. The game cycles through 4 demos: Chemical Plant, Emerald Hill 2-player, Hidden Palace Zone, and Hilltop Zone. This would be the last time that new demos were recorded before the final build. Now that we've done that, let's take a look at the zones. So here we are on the level select, and, well, at this point, the game still uses the zone names and music from Sonic 1, and the Sonic 1 title cards are also there, but are completely invisible. So the first thing, let's go into Green Hill Zone. So, Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1 is still here, except it is completely broken now, with broken collision and glitched missing graphics. Because of the broken physics, most slopes will make Sonic fall and die. Not that I'm going to get to it in this short playing, but S-bend tubes are completely broken. Leaving most of them invisible barriers, basically. All the necessary data for the game to play Green Hill Zone is in the ROM, and has been updated to use Sonic 2's formats. The boss in Act 3 has no camera lock, meaning Sonic can go back into the stage. All three acts have different monitors compared to Sonic 1, meaning the monitor parameters were changed early on in development. That monitor I just picked up is a shield monitor here, but in Sonic 1 it's a ring monitor. All badniks have broken art except for the Chopper, whose colorization is a bit glitchy. Only a little bit though, not that much. Green Hill's palette was not updated to Sonic 2's palette standard, so objects like spikes and rings use the wrong color when they are displayed in debug mode. And also Tails is completely invisible to spikes. Tails, what the hell are you doing? So I guess what I can do right now is try and play as much of this stage as I can. Basically, it's a job of trying to beat the game. Beat Green Hill Zone. It is possible to beat Green Hill Zone in this prototype. Generally, if you can stand on flat ground, stand on flat ground. So, yeah, this is very weird. And this loop is also completely broken. So, yeah, this basically completely confirms that Sonic 2 was built off of Sonic 1, considering that this prototype still has Green Hill Zone in it. I do actually want to see if I can beat Act 1 here. I've never done it before, but it is entirely possible. You just gotta make sure you jump on the correct things, and you don't use the things. I'm pretty sure that's a shield monitor in Sonic 1. So yeah, obviously the object parameters were changed, as mentioned before. Go. So yeah, Green Hill Zone is all kinds of messed up. The background looks very weird. These platforms are completely messed up. Oh well, I came close. Anyway, that makes up Green Hill Zone. So let's take a look at the next stage. Let's go into Marble Zone, which is actually Chemical Plant Zone at an extremely early stage. So first let's take a talk about this stuff. First off, the background, if you see in this bottom corner over here, there we go, you get a bit better side of it here. The background has a pink tint instead of green and does not animate at all, and some of the buildings in the background are also a bit different. The bottom section has a lot of steel beams and an absence of the square blue lights in other builds. You can only see this by actually looking at the sprite of the background in the game's data, because it doesn't scroll in this version. The layout of Act 1 is completely different between versions, with only the very beginning being somewhat visually similar, with the lack of an extra platform and some more rings being the only differences at the beginning. Aside from this, there are more objects on the upper path, but they stop appearing about halfway through. This includes path-stopping objects that make the tubes and loops work. Bubble launchers are in place here, but the bubbles themselves are not. Transport tubes don't work properly, making Sonic fall out to the pit below. The way they're placed showed that you had to run into them instead of breaking them open. Loops have diagonal corners for some reason. When you load Acts 2 and 3, they look visually identical to Act 1, but they use the ring layouts from Green Hill Act 2 and 3. The art for the boss is coded in the ROM, but the boss itself has not been coded yet. And if you use debug mode, objects from Marble Zone will appear with corrupted tiles. So anyway, let's take a look at this. First off, this looks normal. I want to take a look at the upper path. So as I was saying before, yeah, so now I've entered basically a completely different territory, and And as stated, the spin dash is a big work in progress. So let's explore a little bit. So, speed things don't work. And you just fall through stuff. So, yeah. As I was saying, path stopping stuff is basically broken, and you can't actually play the rest of the stage. That's the example of hitting the wall, and for some reason, getting thrown backwards. I want to show off the thing, so let's, I do want to show off what the world looks like, so let's do a quick reset. If we take the bottom path, here, by just simply running along the bottom path instead, we can see what the original paths, the tubes did. As you can see, you just ran into them instead of hitting the top of them as they do in the final game. Really weird, if you think about it, but, you know, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next stage, which is Spring Yard Zone. And yes, I know I'm hitting these over and over again. Good. Anyway, Spring Yard Zone is actually Hidden Palace Zone, which we are going to see a bit more of later on in these bonus video series, but not right now. Act 1 is the most worked on stage apart from Emerald Hill in this build. Although the monitors still use their Sonic 1 mappings, this explains why there's a Tails 1-up monitor, as the Tails 1-up association was the Sonic 1-up in Sonic 1. This also is seen in Green Hill Zone, if you find a Tails 1-up monitor where Sonic 1 would usually be. It is also the only other stage with badniks in it in this build. The other stage being what we'll see later on. It contains dinosaur and bat badniks that both go unused in the final. Many other badniks can be placed in debug mode, including Choppers, Stego, Gato, early Octos, and early Aquis. Choppers appear in Emerald Hill Zone and Green Hill Zone, and Stego and Gato are two enemies that didn't make the final game. Early Octos and early Aquis are both enemies that appear in Oil Ocean Zone. There is an emerald object blocking a pipe in Act 1. It is really meant to be a breakable object and not the Master Emerald, but it doesn't work in this build, and it doesn't work in any other build. Act 1 stops prematurely due to a slope that is too steep to climb. There is little past it to see though. And the underwater palette is the same as the Labyrinth Zone in Sonic 1. Sonic himself looks fine, but Tails looks a bit weird. Acts 2 and 3 have not been worked on. As before, Act 2 uses Green Hill Zone Act 1 object placements, while the same applies to Act 3 with Green Hill Zone Act 3. For some reason or another, the player 2 can control the water level in Act 1 by pressing up or down, and Tails acts like he's on land when in water, so he doesn't slow down and cannot drown. So first let's take a look at what basically the most worked on deleted stage was. So, this is obviously not working very well, but here we are. There's the infamous Tails 1-up monitor, and it does work, it gives me a 1-up. So let's go up here. This is actually a really interesting stage, and a fan favourite among many fans. God damn it, I can't even... There we go. So, this bridge is actually the same one that's in Emerald Hill, just set to, you know, light up when Sonic walks on it. So that's interesting. There's another extra life. So, hop in here, and we'll keep walking along. Yeah, there's the enemies. That's the dinosaur-like enemy. They don't have any names, though, unfortunately, so, you know, that's interesting. Anyway, jump down here. Here's the infamous, breakable item that a lot of people seem to think is the Master Emerald, but actually is not, for some reason. No, the Master Emerald first appeared in Sonic 3, guys. And here's the steep slope that you can't get up because the game is stupid. So basically, this stage was basically nearly complete at this point. Which is really interesting. Really nice to see that this stage was actually nearly complete at some point. So, yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, let's reset once again. And we're gonna go to Labyrinth Zone, which is nothing, a garbled mess that is completely unplayable. See that? It uses Chemical Plant Zone tiles, you can kinda see it, but it doesn't work. This stage is a garbled mess, it's unplayable, and yeah. Let's move on to the next interesting stage, which is Starlight Zone. And Starlight Zone is Emerald Hill Zone, and is actually the most complete stage in this build. Is actually the only stage you can play without using the level select, as it loads up normally when you press start. On Nick Arcade, which this build is named after, players had to collect 25 rings in Emerald Hill Act 1 in 30 seconds. An unused Badnik is found in Emerald Hill. If I just walk over this way, you may see it. Oh, hello there, Snail Badnik. Yeah, he's an unused Snail Badnik. It acts very similar to a Motobug from Sonic 1, moving along the ground, and it will speed up when it spots Sonic. So let's take a playthrough Act 1. Now, Act 1 at first may look very similar, but we'll soon find out that the level design is very different here. It is quite different in many spots. In general, Emerald Hill here is actually quite a bit harder than in the final game. The Snail Badniks are a pain to deal with, especially if you don't know how they work. And, yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting setup. You also cannot get back onto the upper path if you fall down to the lower path, unlike the final game where you can. There are some sections of Act 1 that stayed the same between versions, but most of the time, this is essentially a completely different level. We have never played this stage before, ever. So, yeah. Some ideas were kept, but mostly the level design is completely different. Which is really interesting to see that the level design for this stage changed so much in development. So anyway, yeah, you can actually complete Act 1, there's a signpost here. And the signpost looks a bit different. Yeah, Sonic, stop staring at me, please. That's quite uncomfortable. Act 2 is also complete, and Act 2 itself feels a lot more similar to the final than Act 1 is. However, there are still some differences between the two versions. So, let's take a look. That spring's not there in the final version. But generally, this stage is the same. Just a lot of unnecessary springs that don't need to be there. It feels so weird playing Emerald Hill Zone with Starlight music. So yeah, this stage is basically the same. No platform up there, I don't think, so I don't think there's an actual platform up there with stuff. This is probably the most different section of this stage. And there's a little bit more that's different later on. There's another bloody spring there. Look at this. This is so weird. There's so many springs. And then we're back to familiar territory again, somewhat. We had a little bit of a difference here. This ending area is changed between the two versions. But we get to the end here. And yeah, we have a boss. It is the only zone with a boss in this build, and it literally works the exact same way as in the final. Now, one thing you may have noticed is that Tails isn't here. He's completely absent. Oh, come on. I don't have this much trouble with this boss at all. Tails is completely absent. He's not here. For some reason. I don't know why. But, yeah, this further adds to the fact that this may be the same build that was used in Nick Arcade. And it was most likely done to help Nick Arcade players, as Tails loses Sonic Rings when he's hit. Which is really stupid. Anyway, that's the only complete level in this build. Emerald Hill Zone, I know. So let's move on to Scrap Brain Zone. Which is, in reality, Hilltop Zone. Act 1 can be mostly played through. But the lower screen bound has not changed from Sonic 1. That was me being stupid. The lower screen bound has not changed from Sonic 1, so the stage is unbeatable. basically, which is really stupid. This is the only other worked on stage in this build, really, at all, aside from the other ones. Chemical Plant is probably the least complete stage that is not Labyrinth Zone. Also, another thing, if you want to know, yeah, lava doesn't affect you. Tails, stop losing my rings. So, Act 1, there's still quite a few places that are different. Yeah, lava don't hurt you. But, S-bend tubes don't work yet, they don't automatically make you fall into a ball, and these don't have, these have green balls on them instead of the things they use in the final game. I'm not even trying to remember what they're called right now. So, yeah, quite a bit going on here. The stage is mostly playable, and Act 2 actually has some stuff going on. So here we are in the cave area, and once you enter the cave, the only objects are the ones needed to complete the stage. Stuff like this, which goes the wrong way. And now we're stuck. And now we're not stuck. So, from here on out, the only objects they put down are the ones needed to complete the stage. And you eventually get to this point, where you have another S-bend tube. Over here. And you try taking it, and, well, yeah. There's your example of the lower screen bound not changing. So, we're going to reload, because Act 2 also has its own design. As I said, it is probably the second most completed stage in this build. The problem here is that you can reach the end of the stage. You can't really do much. It's in early practice, and if you use debug mode to get through the wall at the beginning here, you'll find out that you can't beat it because the game tries to load the Scrap Rain Act 2 event that is no longer there. So, yeah, a completely non-existent event that the game tries to load because the game still thinks you're playing Sonic 1. As for Act 3, if you remember, Scrap Rain Act 3 is basically Labyrinth Act 4 in Sonic 1. So what happens if we go to Act 3 of Scrap Rain here? Yeah, it's also broken. You'll also notice that the parallax scrolling here has not been implemented yet, so, you know, that's insane. Anyway, let's go to the final zone. So, let's go to Final Zone, which you can access. And, kinda like in Sonic 1, it loads Hilltop Zone's graphics. However, if you try to play the zone, the game crashes. Because, just like in Act 2, the game is trying to load data that just isn't there anymore. The layout of the stage, if you want to know, is Act 1, but completely devoid of objects. And I'm just going to leave this here as the special stage just causes the game to crash because there's nothing to load. However, if you want to look into the game's code, it's based on Sonic 1. So anyway, let's go into some of the stuff that's in the game's data, but cannot be seen in the Nick Arcade build. Some of the graphic changes in the Nick Arcade prototype of Sonic 2 include Sonic looking like he does in Sonic 1 with the brighter blue colour from the sequel. So it's kind of a mixture between the Sonic 1 sprite and the Sonic 2 sprite. Sonic's blinking animation is really weird. It looks more like his pupils are all the way at the bottom of his eyes. Flesh-coloured eyelids were added in later on. Sonic's eye animations also weren't changed in all frames. They simply added shading around the eyes instead of changing its shape. Sonic's walking animation has 12 frames in this prototype instead of 8 in the final. Probably the easiest to see change in this prototype, Sonic's running animation contains a cartoony blur. It was toned down to just the shoes in the final. The skidding animation is also completely different. It starts brand new, then reuses frames from the first game, then turns around and starts pushing in the other direction. Sonic's pushing animation contains his hands moving, but not his body. The first game had Sonic's body moving, but not his hands. The final version of Sonic 2 fixes this by making his body and hands move on different frames. The early Sonic balancing animation is simply a faster version of the Sonic 1 animation. The final release features a new animation, depending on how far from the edge Sonic is. The only difference with Tails is an added shine to his spinning sprite. There are a couple of changes to Badnik's sprites as well. Buzzer from Emerald Hill was a little bit different. The head was more ant-like, and his abdomen had less detail, and the jets were a bit less straight. Crawl from Casino Night Zone's sprites are in this version, although the zone itself is not. He looks completely different, lacking any walking animation and only putting his shield up in one direction. Another sprite that can appear is the signposts, which is another easy one to see. The signposts were all originally symmetrical. In the final, only Robotnik stayed this way. Along with this, there's also an old fireball graphic. It looks very similar to Sonic 1's fireball graphic. Now let's talk unused sprites. Unlike the previous set of sprites, these sprites were never seen in any form in the final game. This sprite of Sonic turning towards the camera, possibly used when Sonic turned to face the other way. Sprites of Sonic moving faster than normal, then another set with Sonic presumably at max speed. An unused animation of Sonic pulling something. Puzzles may have involved pulling early on. An unused balancing animation, presumably for when Sonic was pixels away from the edge. This background sprite was used in an early version of Hidden Palace, but not in any real known prototype. Animated tiles that aren't loaded anywhere, but seem to match the Chemical Plant level palette. There is also the possibility that they could have been used in an early Metropolis zone. More unused tiles that were possibly used in Chemical Plant. A character set. Unknown if this was made for Sonic 2 or were leftovers from another game. Some burning thing. This could be a remnant of an idea where a buzzer bee-like enemy could burn bridges by firing at them. The Hilltop Zone one-way gates. They are used in the final game, but they just have not been coded yet. Graphics for a possible platform in Hidden Palace Zone. Smoke for some purpose. The Sonic 2 switch is here and ready to be used, but once again, like the Hilltop Zone gate, it hasn't been coded yet. A spinning metal ball. It was seen in some early concept art as an obstacle by bouncing along the floor in an arc. An early badnik called Bubbler's Mother. It would fly around and drop particles that would turn into bubblers. Bubblers themselves would then stick to the floor before exploding. In Crawl's sprite set, there is what looks like a pile of dirt or rocks. This may indicate that Crawl originally popped out of dirt. Now let's look at the final thing for this video. Unused objects that appear and are placeable in-game but work differently compared to the final. Octus are the octopus enemies in Oil Ocean Zone. In this prototype, it would fly off the ground, fire its shot, and then fly to the left or right until it despawns. Stego is a badnik that would have appeared in Hidden Palace Zone. It would have moved back and forth and charge at Sonic when he approaches. They are placeable in debug mode. Gator is a badnik that would have appeared in Dust Hill Zone. It would have moved back and forth, opening its jaws when in Sonic's sight. It is placeable in debug mode. Aquis, the seahorses from Oil Ocean Zone, have two variants. The first would have moved in a simple left-right pattern and will fire at Sonic when he approaches. The second variant has a different body graphic and would have been able to shoot at Sonic multiple times. Neither variant matches how it behaves in the final game. Beefish is a piranha badnik. It would have moved right, then jumped in a high arc. It is placeable with debug mode. The Sonic 1 lamppost is here with a different design. It is placeable in debug mode in Emerald Hill and Hidden Palace, and they appear naturally in Green Hill with garbled graphics. There are some unused monitors as well. Just like in the first game, a static monitor that does absolutely nothing. A Robotnik monitor that also does nothing at this point. Unlike Sonic 1, it actually does appear in the final game in the 2-player mode, where it damages the player, like its original intention in Sonic 1. A mystery monitor. That also does nothing. It was removed soon after this prototype. A spring monitor that was also removed after this prototype. It is theorized it would have either acted like a spring or increased Sonic's jump height. So that is the first half of the development history of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Next time we're going to look at the other half of this game's development history, taking a look at the Simon Y prototype, and taking a look at betas 4 to 8, and then taking a look at some of the stuff that goes unused in the final release. Until next time, ciao!